I always have a parking space.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 5th meeting of the Elmer Council. Let's begin with a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you. Item 3, confirmation of the agenda. We have a mover and seconder. Councillor Desrosiers, Councillor Ozelach. Any additions, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor is carried. Thank you. Item 4, reminder of declare pecuniary interest if you have any. We have no delegations of public meetings. The next item is the 5.1, the Committee of Adjustment. First, we need a resolution to recess and commence the Committee of Adjustment. Do we have a mover and seconder for recess? Councillor Chapman and Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? It's carried. So, the clerk, want to read the items?
The Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Elmer is convened to consider application 04-24. Additional information relating to the applications is available for inspection between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays at Elmer Town Hall. Signed written submissions are accepted by the Secretary Treasurer prior to or during the hearings, and such submissions shall be available for inspection by any interested party. If a party is notified but does not attend the hearing, the committee can proceed, and the party is not entitled to any further notice of hearings. Submissions or requests for notice can be sent to clerks@town.elmer.on.ca. A copy of the decision will be mailed to those persons who attend or are represented at the hearing, and those who have filed a written request with the Secretary for notice of the committee's decision. The committee will hear input in the following order: presentation of the staff report by the Manager of Planning and Development, agent or applicant, the public, staff, and the clerk. Application 04-24 is made by 1000830270 Ontario Inc. as the owner of the property municipally known as 110 Talbot Street West in the town of Elmer. The purpose of the variance is to remove the accessory building and construct in addition to the existing gap pump island with canopy by adding an additional gas pump and construct an addition to the existing store, including a residential dwelling unit on the proposed second story.
Thank you. The Manager of Planning and Development, please provide a report. Heather.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as mentioned, the variance before you tonight is to facilitate an addition to the existing, what's known as the existing Esso gas station, which has a convenience store. So what's happening is the building that fronts onto Raglan Street, formerly known as 23 Raglan Street, will be removed. 23 Raglan Street and 110 Talbot Street used to be two legally separate parcels. Those two parcels have effectively merged together to create one parcel. So the owner is removing that building that fronts under Raglan Street in order to be able to add an additional gas pump to the existing gas pumps that are at the Esso station, as well as extending the overhead canopy, as well as adding an addition to the existing convenience store and in addition to building a second story onto this convenience store to add a dwelling unit above it. So essentially what this variance will do, it will permit a reduced front yard depth from 15 meters down to 5.6 meters. And it's important for me to draw your attention to the fact that the front yard is actually classified on Raglan Street for this property. Because it's a corner lot, we have to take the smallest measurement along the street. The smallest measurement along the street is on Raglan Street, not Talbot Street. So therefore the front yard fronts on to Raglan. So They're requesting for a reduction in the front yard setback from 15 meters to 5.6 meters, a reduced interior side yard from 7 meters down to 4.9 meters, reducing the minimum landscape open space from 5% down to 4.5%, as well as recognizing the existing deficiencies in the exterior side yard setback, which is the side that abuts Talbot Street West, which is the existing setback of 8.2 meters, as well as the existing rear yard, which is what's in behind the car wash, of 1.5 meters. Figure 1 shows kind of an aerial photograph of the location of the property, and Figure 2 shows the proposal for the development. I apologize for the quality of this. This is the engineering drawings that were provided to me. If anyone needs additional engineering drawings, I can provide them to them electronically. That is the best way to view this. The application was circulated to town staff for comment. Town staff had no concerns with the files. It's important to note that should this variance be approved, the owner will be required to enter into a site plan approval agreement with the town. Any engineering comments from town staff will be provided, resolved through the site plan approval process. The application was also circulated to all neighboring property owners within 60 meters of the lands, and at the time of submission of this report, no comments were received. As well, the application was circulated to public agencies, and the public agencies had no concerns. Moving on to the 4 tests of this minor variance. The first test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? And yes, it does. The property's designated arterial commercial. This type of land use permits the existing uses on the property, that being a gas station, convenience store, as well as the proposed dwelling unit on the second story. The second test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And yes, it does. The property is currently zoned support commercial, which permits a variety of commercial uses, such as the uses that are at this property, as well as it also permits the proposed dwelling unit on the second story. So essentially, we provide minimums for front yard depths, essentially to provide sufficient area between the front lot line and the road allowance of a property to allow for the safe ingress and egress of vehicular traffic. We also establish interior side yards with, in order to provide adequate buffering between properties. As well, we also require a minimum landscape open space area on a lot for stormwater management primarily. I'm of the opinion that with these proposed exceptions requested, all of these areas are being identified and that the proposal meets all the other C2 zone requirements. The third test, is the variance requested desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and the buildings? And yes, it is. It's important to note the proposed reduction in the required front yard will be utilizing the same front yard setback as the existing gas pump island has already. So it's not encroaching any further into the front yard than what you would currently see right now with where the gas pumps are situated on the property. The proposed reduction in the interior side yard width will have no impact on the adjacent land use, that being an alleyway which is owned by the town. And lastly, the decrease in landscape open space will have a minimal impact. As I mentioned, this property will be subject to site plan approval, and as part of the site plan approval process, we will be requiring stormwater management review as a part of this development. Planning staff are satisfied that the variance will facilitate an appropriate use of the property. And the fourth and final test, is the variance considered minor in nature? Yes, it is. The variance will have a minimal impact with respect to the environment, municipal functions, and the surrounding property owners. So in conclusion, it's planning staff's opinion that the proposed application for a minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property and meets the intent and purpose of the official plan, policies, and zoning bylaw regulations. And that I'm recommending for the proposed application for the minor variance A04-24 be approved, subject to no concerns coming forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Next item is the applicant present. If so, do they wish to speak?
For virtual.
Agent present? I believe there's an agent online.
Hi, My name is Thomas Lucas. I'm the applicant on file. I work for Zoltan Engineering. We prepared the design drawings. I don't have any questions. I appreciate your time and efforts, and I appreciate the support from all the members.
Okay. Item 5, I didn't hear that totally. Was there any follow-up on the comment? No follow-up, thank you. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak, if so, you approach the podium and give us your name.
Hi there, I'm Mary Lynn McPherson, and I'm here representing Cherry Street Not-for-Profit Housing Corporation. And Cherry Street owns the property on the other side of the laneway that the town owns. So on the south side, it used to be owned by Durkee's, that property. So there's, Cherry Street owns the Durkee property and two houses that front onto Center Street. So we have no concerns. We really just wanted to come to express our approval that there's more housing going to be available as a result of this particular application, because Cherry Street in due course hopes to develop on that southern property higher density housing to relieve some of the housing pressures that there are in the community. So just really wanted to say, yes, we're supportive, and we'll be back here sometime in the future looking for some approvals as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come to council and give us your views on this. Item 6, were there any members of the public that you know of beyond this?
No members of the public have otherwise
Received any
requested.
additional communications?
We have not.
Council, any comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you. To Heather or to the applicant, clarification on the accessory building. There is a wood-type structure. I don't know what it's being used for. I don't know, 12 feet by something that's adjacent to the laneway access to the car wash. That isn't the accessory building that we're talking about.
Through you, Your Worship. No, the accessory building I'm referring to in my report that's being removed is the property that was known as 23 Ragland Street. It's a kind of a brick building, one level, very close to the street on Ragland Street. So it's directly just south of where the gas pump island is right now.
Is that Guns and Gadgets?
Yes, or formerly, I'm not.
Formerly, yes.
Yes. That is the building that I referred to in the report as the accessory building that is being removed in order to allow for the gas pump addition to occur.
Okay, just a clarification then, the wood-type structure that's there doesn't show on anything. Is it permissible?
Let me just pull up the drawings that were submitted here, just one moment. The site plan drawing that I have, that you have before you, is not showing that little wooden structure, whatever, or whatsoever. That is the area that's being removed, that's the area that's being added onto, where you see that little wooden structure that I believe there's a car being parked there by, I believe, the operator of the gas station. That's being removed to allow for that addition to the convenience store to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Council Desrosiers.
I was just going to follow up, or thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to follow up on Deputy Mayor Barber's comment, looking at the drawings, the yellow area there, the existing shelter to be demolished to accommodate that addition onto the store, as well as the residential above. So, as Heather just mentioned, I think we are in confirmation that it is being removed, which I think is a positive thing. I've always had concerns with that shelter, so I think this is, optimistically, this is going to be a lot more visually appealing and more, in my opinion, structurally sound. So I think this is a great thing, and I definitely support this. Thank you.
Any other comment or discussion from council? Seeing none, we'll now consider the following resolution. Owen?
That report Plan 17-24, Planning Evaluation Report respecting the application for minor variance A4-24, 110 Talbot Street West be received, and that the application for minor variance A4-24 seeking relief from section 15.3 as follows: the front yard depth minimum automobile service station of 5.6 meters. 2, the interior side yard width minimum automobile service station of 4.9 meters, the existing exterior side yard width of 8.2 meters, and the existing rear yard depth minimum of 5.1 meters, and 5, the landscaped open minimum space automobile service station of 4.5% be approved.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Barber, seconded by Councilor Desrosiers. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we'll have a resolution to adjourn the committee.
That the Committee of Adjustment meeting does now close and council reconvene at 7:16 PM.
Mover and seconder, Councilor Chapman and Councilor Oslach. All those in favor? Carried. Now we'll go back to the regular council agenda. Item 6, which is a consent agenda. There's a resolution.
Yes. That the June 5th, 2024 consent agenda be received for information, and that the included recommendations within the staff report be adopted, and that the council approves the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 15th, 2024.
Note the consent agenda includes all of the communications and all of the minutes. Mover and seconder, Councilor Chapman, Councilor Roy. Discussion? Councilor Roy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't know who it goes to, but it'd be 611, and it's the donation receipt for the Project Lifesaver Fund. I was just curious if we would ever see like a breakdown of where that money goes to, or does it just disappear into the pot of the Project Lifesaver Fund?
I don't know if I have a total answer to that. I think that Councilor Van Razy did explain the money when he was here last. He's not here this evening, but are you talking about the total amount for Project Lifesaver?
Yeah, it's just my memory of wondering what it was actually doing.
I don't know. Is anyone? We'll have, I think we'll have Councilor Van Rays kind of speak to that at the next meeting. Is that fine? Anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Item 7, action item 7.1, the manager of Parks and Recreation. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan implementation.
That report, Recreation 8-24, entitled Parks and Recreation Master Plan Implementation, be received as information, and that council approve the implementation strategy as outlined in the report, and further that staff be directed to include monetized recreation software and adjustments to staffing levels for the 2025 Finance Committee consideration.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, Councilor Desrosiers and Councilor Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Council. This report serves as an update report to CAO 5623 that was presented to Council in September. At that time, Council directed staff to return with an update to the master plan, and I'm pleased to present a proposed implementation strategy for Council tonight. So this implementation strategy relates directly to the recommendations from the master plan, and staff are committed to ensuring that this document remains a vital resource in planning for the future of Parks and Recreation rather than sitting on a shelf. The intention is to keep this plan relevant and start building an even more active and engaged Aylmer from it. It's evident to staff through community consultation paired with recommendations from the master plan that Aylmer is an active and engaged community. The expectations of recreation facilities and community programs are high, and residents are engaged and do provide that feedback when approached and have the opportunity. Staff have listened to the community. We've held some open public consultation sessions since January and have had some great feedback to support this implementation strategy as well. So throughout the report and towards the end, you'll see some key items for consideration. And we're looking to address the needs of the residents by modernizing the recreation software system that currently exists and reviewing the Parks and Recreation staffing complement to further enhance the program offerings, and both of which I'll talk about a little deeper in the report. So you might have to get out the hook if I get too involved. This is exciting for me in recreation. So the purpose of the report tonight is like I'd mentioned, to provide a recommended implementation strategy of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for council approval, so we can work towards accomplishing some of the great goals within the master plan. So as a refresher, the master plan identifies priorities as short, mid, and long-term priorities. The short-term really are actionable items identified as critical items to be addressed within 1 to 3 years of the adoption of the report, midterm from 4 to 6, and long-term priorities within 7 to 10 years of the adoption of the plan. So it's important to note, as I've listed in the report, that this is a living document, so staff are cognizant to shift priorities or reallocate resources as trends change or funding becomes available. It is a fluid document, or as political desires may change. So the focus on this report, I've mentioned it here, and I won't go into it in great depth, but there are 6 categories identified within the master plan. Overall, there are about 68 recommendations for the community for Parks and Recreation in the plan, 23 of which are identified as short-term priorities, and I'm going to drill down on those a little bit more in this implementation strategy. So it's important to note to council, and I think it's important as a staff team, that we work collaboratively so we can ensure Parks and Recreation are represented in strategic documents, both internally and external documents, legislation, any strat planning exercises we have to make sure that we're all in alignment and recreation is being represented. There's evidence from even the budget survey that recreation is important to the community, and we're hoping to build off of that. So to address, we're looking to address the short-term priorities while managing operational work plans. So to do that, because there are 23 short-term priorities, I've broken those into 3 phases so we can address these as manageable and achievable chunks, if you will. So we can really take a strategic approach to finding some actionable items and some achievable items so we can show that we are producing results from this important document that was created for and by the community. You'll see within there as well, I've listed 3 phases within the short-term priorities as well as an ongoing phase before you tonight. Those ongoing items listed in the master plan are really important operational items that need to not disappear. So they're not a start and finish project, but important to the successful operations of a Parks and Rec business. So if we look to the first phase, the timeline or priorities for 2024, I'm happy to report that there are some achievements to report to council, some good news stories from here, and also some items to highlight. So the first item listed is transitioning to a modernized recreation payment and registration system. So basically, this will help improve the user experience, help mitigate duplication in staff time. Modernized recreation systems provide opportunities to speak to our financial systems, so we don't have to, take our data, input it into our financial systems to produce outcomes. There's some really great data and analytics that can be derived from new software that exists, and also some neat engagement tools. So some surveys that can go directly to our users and produce a really neat user experience. So folks in their smartphone, if they're at the ballpark watching their kids play a sport, they can register for a rec program, a drop-in class. They can pay, they can show up. We can avoid the cash handling, things like that. There's some really exciting and interesting opportunities. Our current system is working. It's kind of a pay per module system, but this really will take us to the next level, and it'll help us in our promotion of our programming. So that's something to look for, hopefully, in the 2025 Finance Committee deliberations. So the focus on the 2024 priorities really is the online, to investigate the online booking system. We haven't focused on capital improvements in this phase, but really building those partnerships, focusing on understanding what the needs of the users are in the community, building relationships with our community partners, and really taking a solid look at the inventory of the programs and services that are offered in Aylmer right now, so that we can make sure that we're providing the community what's needed. So we're not duplicating what's being done in the public or private sector. We can add capacity to our local community groups or help fill the gaps where needed through our programming. The next phase from 2025 to 2026 that I'm projecting, or suggesting rather, focuses on trails, parklands, playgrounds, connectivity. So making sure we can move people in an active and healthy way around Aylmer, through Aylmer, while they're engaging with their community. So this will be making sure that recreation is in the forefront of development and considered. So parklands, trails, if it's playgrounds, making sure that we have that equity distribution. So making sure that we're connecting, working collaboratively within our staff team and the community. So if we move to the third phase of implementing our short-term priorities, this takes us into 2026, 2027, so the end of the short-term phase. This is where we're looking again to ensure there's equity in the parks, looking to some seniors, active seniors facilities, so whether that's outdoor fitness equipment, investigating indoor seniors programming, ensuring that our outdoor amenities, outdoor recreation amenities are appropriate for youth, and again, making sure that we're keyed into our parkland distribution strategies. So if, as I mentioned before, some of the ongoing priority items you'll see listed on this next slide before you here, these are key items to make sure that our business is running efficiently, that we're staying in touch with the community and we're listening to our residents, and that we're also responsible to the ratepayers. Anything new, programs, services, amenities, facilities that we are looking to implement or to consider, that we have a cost-benefit analysis, that there's thorough thought in there, that we're making sure that we can investigate opportunities to reduce the burden to the ratepayers by investigating grant opportunities that are out there, and keeping recreation affordable and accessible as it should be, and inclusive of all communities. It's really exciting to connect with our volunteers to help build capacity as well, and we've had some great, even this week we've had a great example of that, working with our local community in our high school in beautifying Balmoral Park. So we're hoping to continue some of that great work. So those ongoing items there are just to make sure that they're sort of outside, but you'll see those repeated in future reports as we come back here. So the key items for consideration that I had mentioned before, the first priority is the modernization of our recreation-based software system. So transitioning to an online booking, payment, and registration system. So the customer experience is improved, which will then free up some of our admin time to focus on additional tasks. If folks can inquire about renting a facility or book a pavilion, which we're seeing great uptake in recently, book a facility online, make their payment, and have their receipt sent to their email. These systems are pretty exciting. Our current system does have some limitations that doesn't permit folks to complete transactions without actually being in touch with the staff, having that physical transaction, or actually coming on site to do that. The current system also doesn't communicate with our financial system, so that creates a little bit of extra work for our staff on the back end. So we're hoping that an upgraded system will include these functionalities that can have a reduction in staff time while improving the user experience. So we're hoping that we're planning to include this item for consideration on the 2025 capital budget. So hopefully this will not be a surprise when it comes to budget time. The next key item for consideration is reviewing staff allocations so we can meet the goals of the master plan. So it's important to note that there are a number of recommendations relating directly to community recreation programming. And we've got very limited staff to do so. So our current offerings that we have are limited to our public skating, very passive use drop-in programs, pickleball, shuffleboard, some annual community events, and then our passive use, our trails, our parks and whatnot. We're hearing from the community that they'd like more. They'd like organized activities, whether it's drop-in programming for children, for youth, for active adults, for seniors, whether that's a fitness class or a series of children's workshops, drop-in opportunities for seniors. We're hearing that our residents do have that expectation of services that we currently have identified a gap in our staffing complement to be able to provide that. We've got a great, hardworking Parks and Recreation staff who are currently deployed to take care of our operational needs of our facilities and our amenities in town. But it's important to identify that we have that gap and that experience to be able to provide that recreation programming. So it wouldn't be as easy as redeploying one staff from one area to another area. It would be really looking to make the best sense of our staffing complement to be able to address the needs of the community, providing that resource. The master plan is in line with Trends in Recreation in that our volunteers are key to running amazing events, and that's demonstrated through, the barbecue happening at the complex tonight. It's pretty amazing. So how staff play a role in that and community recreation programming is, we're happy to work ourselves out of a job often. We look forward to it. So working with volunteer groups and community organizations or just passionate people to implement a new activity, a new program, building capacity in those volunteers through our experience, and then kind of giving them wings and sending them out into the community so we have that staff time and resource to go and help build something else. And before you know it, you have a vibrant community that's addressing a bunch of needs through some staff resource. So it is a wonderful community development model that I think would work in Aylmer, but we are missing that key experience to kind of be boots on the ground to make that happen. So that'll be another item. This is a sneak peek to the 2025, some items for consideration that will be before you. So I think staffing resources, like I'd mentioned, have been conservatively allocated in the past, which reflects favorably on the budget, and I think we've done a really good job allocating those resources to manage our amenities. To get to that next level and give the folks what's indicated in the master plan, I think we need to take a deep dive into that. So you'll see that upcoming. So in conclusion, staff have approached the implementation of the Rec Master Plan with a focus on community recreation programming rather than capital items as it's been an identified gap in service. And as I had mentioned, the strategy will be further reflected in budget exercises for 2025. We're very confident in the ability to accomplish the goals of the implementation plan and further request support of council of the recommendations within the report before you tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
No, thank you, Suzie. Council? Councilor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple questions here, so I guess I'll list them off. The playground review and assessment that's done in Phase 1, would we see any tangible capital upgrades or development from that phase item, or would it simply be more research and development? The other question I have is Phase 3, explore additional outdoor amenities for youth. There is 2 specific items within the short-term list from the master study that we had done. And number 17 was additional playgrounds, and number 23 was the addition of amenities for teens. So I wanted to know, was this item in Phase 3, does it cover both 17 and 23, or one specifically? And the last question I have is regarding the additional staffing complement of a recreation coordinator. We currently have a staff member whose specific title is a Parks and Recreation Coordinator. So what is the difference between that staff, that member that we currently already have, and the one that this report is suggesting? Thank you.
Through your worship, you may have to help me, Councillor DesRosiers, if I miss a piece of that. That was action-packed, but I'll do my best to address that, so just give me a nudge if I need to backtrack on something. So those are great questions, and I think we're on the same page here. So basically, Phase 1, so 2024, when I talk about playground review, so this is when we're not getting into big capital items. It's June. This is the time to really review what we've got. So I think I've got this listed to review in Q3. Review what we have, what we need going forward, so that we can sit and include items that are relevant or necessary to include in the 2025 budget. So there may be some capital items coming down the pike when it comes to that. So that could very well be part and parcel with your question about outdoor amenities for youth as well. So having mentioned before that this is a living in a fluid document, so if there's an envelope of funding available for outdoor recreation focused, on youth engagement, we'll for sure shift that to another priority. Or if it's a playground that can be intergenerational or have a focus on youth, we'll certainly bring that into the fold. So I think it's important when we're reviewing the playgrounds that it won't just be based on the needs of children necessarily, that we're going to keep those outdoor amenities, for active adults, seniors, and teens in mind too. If that answer is kind of a part of, is that okay? All right, good. And then the question about the position, did I miss anything in your other question?
No, you're good.
Okay, perfect.
You're a rock star, Susie.
Feel free to jump in. So the question about the staffing complement, we do have a Parks and Recreation Coordinator right now, and her focus is largely administrative. So when it comes to ice allocation, ball diamond allocation, permits, things like that, this position does facilitate some special events, so helps with the administration and the function of special events. But is really key. So this position specifically, if we were to transition to a new rec software system, would be a really key stakeholder, a really key staff position in making that successful, and would use a bunch of that staff resource. So really, it is an administratively heavy position right now. That doesn't really lend a lot of capacity to be flexible and mobile to offer recreation programming. So a community recreation programmer or coordinator that I've got listed in the report, and the title is flexible and fluid, but needs to be identifiable enough so that we can differentiate. So administrative functions, whether they happen Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, or they shift based on recreational needs, would be different from the needs of a community recreation programmer or coordinator. So recreation really needs to happen outside of banker's hours. So when people go home, they have an expectation of looking for, an activity for my children, or, there's a weekend event that I want to go to. So something that we can be a bit more flexible with that, and someone with the experience too of having developed, implemented, facilitated recreation programs for all ages and abilities. So someone who, or a candidate in this position would be someone who's he's had experience with seniors programming. We know our demographic is trending that way. So offering programming, active and passive programming for seniors. So it's not all, we corner the market really well on youth sports. We've got the facilities. We've got a vibrant cultural community. We've got some neat opportunities there, but something that can really be inclusive of the community and offer some of those, just having the experience in running some children's programming. So our current staffing complement, basically their position doesn't have that expectation within it, if that makes sense, Councillor Desrosiers. So it would be important to have someone who can focus on those, on delivering those community programs.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I'll come back to you, Councillor Desrosiers, give somebody else a chance.
Okay, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Barber?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Susie, you mentioned several times that the master plan is a living, breathing document. The people of this community are hoping, they're expecting that this program, this document, this vision is not going to be sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It's going to take a lot of folks to make it happen, council, staff, and the community. Are you confident that we can get there?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you for that question. Absolutely. I'm excited to come to council tonight with some deliverables already. In having communicated with some folks and some user groups, the desire is there. We have a really solid master plan to back that. And what's also exciting to me in my position is having a supportive council who identifies recreation as a priority. So that's job one. That makes life a little bit easier in itself. I think it is important to make sure that we monitor the reports so that there's consistent reports to council. So if priorities do shift and constituents have communicated needs or expressed interest, that it'll come to staff through council. So I am confident in the plan. I think it's a great plan. We'll just have to make sure that we're planning through our our business plans and our budgets to get there.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Did you have a comment on this, Rob?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did. I want to acknowledge all the work that Susie has put into this development of this implementation plan for council. She really saw the plan and sort of really hit the ground running on meeting with the community, finding out what they need, where they want us to go. So all of that background work was part of this implementation strategy for council tonight. We're in a bit of a sweet spot. If you remember, the budget we're going to go into next year also includes a huge pool liner for the council to consider. So we're kind of lucky that we're a few steps away from needing capital to implement our plan. What the community has met with Susie, and they're great volunteers out there, they're looking for us to kind of help them get organized. They've got a lot of great people. We're missing a component, a programming coordinator that can meet with those people and get it kind of organized. And then the other component is the software. Right now, where I am, I can register and go to the pickleball within 20 minutes of registering for the program. That's kind of key. So assuming that council is in favor of this, Susie's implementation strategy, if we kind of agree in principle, we'll put all the missing parts together and show back up at the budget. So, okay, if we need some software, it's this. If we need a part-time programmer or a full-time programmer, it's going to cost this. But if we're not happy with the way Susie has laid it out, having met with everybody, then we need to go back and revisit that. But I'm pretty confident that you've got some great community people out there that are just looking for the town to kind of get organized and give them sort of some missing pieces of that puzzle. That's great because our capital budget would then be maybe 2 years down the road, or we can include all the playground equipment in this year if council wants. But we're kind of in a bit of a sweet spot with the programming. We're behind, and we can maybe get organized by just leveraging our volunteers that are already out there, I think is what Susie's hearing.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, then I'll go back to Councillor Desrosiers because I know she has some other questions. Susie, you mentioned two items which are kind of time sensitive, and everybody's been kind of talking about the booking software and the boots on the ground. Both of those are time sensitive items in terms of making this happen. I believe that the Finance Committee is meeting very soon. I think the next meeting. Will we have numbers dealing with these items at the Finance Committee?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've been communicating with the Director of Finance, and we intend to have information for review.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up from the response for the one question regarding the staff addition, I'm not 100% sold on it still, just because of already having that staff member who is sort of the coordinator title, but also as well as the sales pitch to council for the new Parks and Recreation manager was that they would have the skill set to develop recreational programming. So I'm still a little confused about that, but I am open to receiving that report from staff at our Finance Committee meeting to kind of go over that a little bit more in detail. The other thing I just wanted to mention was that personally for me, the improvements and additions to playgrounds inventory are a priority. According to our master plan that we got done, number 17 is that the town is currently in a deficit of 2 playgrounds. So I think developing those plans and having those assessments done is essential, because I don't know if anybody else saw, but the town of Ilderton just received a $150,000 Ontario Trillium Foundation grant for a new playground. And if those opportunities are available to this community, I would like to capitalize on that to combat that deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, good points. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much for that report. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion? That's carried, thank you. Item 7.2, Director of Legislative Services, housekeeping amendments to the Elmer procedural bylaw resolution.
That report clerk 16-24 regarding housekeeping amendments to the Elmer procedural bylaw be received as information, and that council approve the proposed updates to the procedural bylaw and direct staff to bring forward an amending bylaw at the June 19th meeting of council.
Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Barber, Councillor Chapman. No one.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. So this report simply regards housekeeping amendments to the Elmer procedural bylaw. You've had these reports before you in the past. We like to do routine reviews of the procedural bylaw to make sure that we're following best practices that we observe in other municipalities. So the primary aims of these amendments are to enhance meeting efficiency and limit the topics of delegations that can be presented to council to ensure that they're focused on matters within council's jurisdiction and areas of influence. So the key amendments include limiting delegations to topics within council's jurisdiction, prohibiting delegations on sensitive topics such as labor relations, litigation, election campaigning, and commercial advertising, ensuring that confidential matters are protected and are not discussed in delegations, preventing council having to revisit decisions through delegations which they've already made decisions on, as well as restricting any premature discussions on matters that have been referred by council to staff for future staff reports. These changes do reflect best practices that we've observed in other municipalities, and we're making these recommendations proactively to just ensure that the procedural bylaw meets council's needs. And with that, I can take any questions.
Council? Councilor Desrosiers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, more a statement. I just want to make sure these revisions don't act as a discouragement for delegations. I think public delegations are a valuable tool for council. So as it mentioned in the report, should a member of the public have a concern with a delegation request, I encourage them to speak to a member of council.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Item 7.3, Director of Operations, bulk fill rate resolution.
That report operations 18-24 respecting bulk fill rate be received as information, and that council endorse the inclusion of a bulk fill water rate in the 2025 water rates as outlined in the report.
Mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Reyes, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Rob.
Thank you, Your Worship. as council's aware, you have a regulatory obligation to set a financial plan for the water system to make sure it's self-sustaining and self-funding. With the inclusion of the new bulk fill station at the tower, we don't currently have a rate for that. So staff did a little bit of a research, and we think we have what is a reasonable number for a cubic meter rate for our bulk fill station, just by a quick survey of surrounding areas, and we're suggesting that that meets the regulatory obligation for council just to include that rate in our upcoming annual water rate bylaw that happens in sort of November. You'll recall our water rates are done, they're regulated by the ministry. They have to be done every, I think it's 7 years, done by an economist who usually does it. If council's not sort of happy with the way we've done the estimate, we would reach back out to the economist to give us a rate, but it doesn't seem cost effective to kind of do that. I would suggest that we could include this bulk water rate in the next time we do our water rates, and probably it wouldn't even be part of the cost, like it wouldn't even influence what the bid was. And then we would have data at that time too that we could give the economist to figure out the rate for us. So we kind of think this satisfies our regulatory obligation and allows us to get some data to be able to do the next rate when we do it formally.
Thank you. Council? Okay, no comments from council. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 7.4, Chief Administrative Officer dealing with wireless installations resolution.
That report CAO 32-24 respecting wireless installations on municipal property policy be received as information, and that council adopt the proposed wireless installation on municipal property policy, and that council direct staff to provide notice to parties with infrastructure on the town's existing water tower storage facility that the location will be discontinued in coordination with the town's new water tower.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Oslash, Councillor Rahi.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So this report seeks to establish a policy for installations primarily of telecommunications equipment on municipal property. This represents a new policy for the town. We didn't have an existing one previously. There's one existing agreement that we signed a number of years ago that charged $2 for this to one company. Most of the other installations on the water tower are related to our own operations, such as the secondary water board or fire or police services, so we wouldn't be recovering revenue from that. We did review policies of other municipalities. Given that Elmer is kind of surrounded by predominantly rural lands, the fees that we are suggesting are significantly lower than what was in these other policies. A lot of the policies come from the Toronto area, so we took about half of the fee as a rule of thumb. There is still a potential, though, for this to serve as a significant revenue source, particularly if a provider wished to utilize the new water tower. The town hasn't had any interest expressed to date in a new installation at the water tower, but you can imagine it's significantly cheaper for service providers to build onto our infrastructure rather than purchase land and build a tower themselves. So there is a big incentive for companies, if they want to have increased cellular range, to look for these opportunities, and we just want to make sure we have the policy in place. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions of council.
Council. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Carried. Item 7.5, Administrative Officer Wide Area Network Resolution.
That report CAO 33-24 respecting wide area network economic development opportunity be received as information, and that council provide direction to staff to, upon proceeding to an issue a request for expression of interest process for a wide area network.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Chapman, Deputy Mayor Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report seeks to utilize the town's procurement process for a wide area network to provide an incentive to internet service providers to introduce high-speed fiber to the town. Town staff have been trying for the last several years to get widespread fiber implementation into the town. We believe it's very close to occurring. However, we're presenting a unique approach to council if you want to provide an additional kind of push to see if we can make that happen and try to dictate a bit of the timelines for it. Municipalities usually are prevented from providing bonuses to businesses. However, in this case, by using our procurement of SCADA network connectivity, along with our municipal facilities connecting, we could provide an incentive to encourage broader installations in the community. There's also the potential for council to determine if they wanted to provide a grant, say from the Council Initiatives Reserve. This would allow council to have more insight and say into residential connections and kind of the scope, and even potentially look at what the proposed rates for such services would be for the community prior to awarding. There's a lot of unknowns at this point, so we're suggesting a non-binding expression of interest process. This will allow us to engage and have discussions with internet service providers and really refine exactly what we're going to look for when we go out to procurement. And we're doing this because normally if we have those types of discussions before we issue a procurement, we would eliminate every single vendor that we talked with. So we're going to look at this and try to have a broad dialogue with them to figure out what is possible and what we can do. And then we'll bring that back to council before we reward. So you'll see the final options. This is just to get that initial process and say that we're not opposed to that kind of concept of looking at this. Staff do believe that access to high-speed fiber connections is really an economic development issue for a lot of communities. People want it, businesses want it when they come to a community. So if we can provide it and slightly increase our capital cost on a project to make that happen, it is probably a good thing for the community for us to try to do that. So really, this is just a creative, different approach to try to make something happen that we know the community's really been pushing for some time. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions of council.
Council, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's carried. Item 7.6, Chief Administrative Officer Roundtable Meeting, Old Town Hall Resolution.
That report CAO 31-24 respecting the roundtable meeting at the Old Town Hall be received as information, and that staff be directed to present terms of reference for an advisory committee for council's consideration, and that staff be directed to investigate the town providing insurance coverage to groups utilizing the Old Town Hall.